What's the latest on Moderna's attempt to bring a vaccine to market? And what about the claims of pump and dump going around? In this video, we'll talk about the latest news from Moderna and the company's race to be the first with a vaccine. And we'll also discuss the volatility of the stock price and what's driving it, including the claims of the company pumping the stock price up with news, only to then have the insider sell-off. 2 weeks ago, while everyone was gushing on news of the vaccine data, I took a balanced approach in looking at the company's efforts, only to hear some of my thoughts echoed on TV a week later. Stay tuned for what I'm thinking today. Welcome to Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, where we talk about little things that can lead to big improvements in our financial and physical health. If these are the things you're interested in, you'll definitely want to subscribe and become a part of our community because, after all, it's free and it'll make sure you don't miss any upcoming videos. And if you're interested in developments towards a vaccine to end the pandemic from an investor's point of view, we've got you covered. So definitely hit that notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming videos as soon as they're released. So at the end of last week, Moderna's stock jumped over 10% on news that the company was beginning its phase 2 study on its vaccine candidate, the next step in bringing a vaccine to market to help end the pandemic. The phase 2 study will have around 600 participants, with about half being in a group ranging from 18 to 55-year-olds and the other half being in a group of people all over the age of 55. For each of the two age groups, the participants will then be broken down into 3 more groups, with one group getting a placebo, another group getting a 50 micrograms dose, and another getting a 100 micrograms dose. While we still have not gotten the full data set of the phase 1 study, what we do know is that for the patients that had a negative reaction, it was mostly with a 250 micrograms dose, and the company has decided to no longer pursue studying that higher dose. It was announced that the initial participants have received their first doses, which will then be followed by another dosing 28 days later. Following the second dose, all participants in the study will be followed for 12 months for efficacy and safety. Now, while 12 months seems pretty long due to the severity of the situation, keep in mind that this process is moving at a much faster rate than is typical for bringing a vaccine to market. However, there won't be a wait to start a bigger phase 3 trial study, as right now that is slated to begin this July. Although we have yet to see the full data set of the phase 1 trial, the company is moving along quickly, and due to the early positive data, the FDA has granted the company a fast-track designation. The company has also extended its relationship with Corden Pharma, which will help to supply Moderna with materials needed to produce its vaccine candidate. From everything I can tell, Moderna seems to be leading in developing the first vaccine. As I mentioned in my previous videos on Moderna, which I'll link in the description, there are still a lot of unknowns and reasons to be cautious, but all signs point to them leading the competition, and that's always the best position to be in. So now you're thinking, things are going well. The stock is well off from their highs of $87 2 weeks ago, and this might be a good time to invest in Moderna, right? Are you thinking that? Okay, before I go on, as I've shared before, I'm not a financial advisor and I'm not providing any financial advice for you to act on. Just sharing my own thoughts on the situation, using my experience in looking at clinical data and my own history of investing. You always should do your own homework and consult with your own financial advisor when making investment decisions. All right, there are a lot of signs out there telling us to proceed cautiously. One important factor for me is knowing that we still have only seen data on 8 patients. That alone limits us from making any generalizations on the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. Also, you want to keep in mind that it is not uncommon for drugs to move forward from a phase 1 trial. There are some reports of the FDA stating that 70% actually do this. In phase 2 is where a majority of drugs fail to move forward, so Moderna is still nowhere near out of the woods. While apparently leading the race, we know there is a lot of competition out there. I've talked about Novavax in another video, and there are many more companies I'll be discussing in the near future. For those expecting Moderna to make a huge profit off the vaccine, they would almost have to be the sole winner where they won't get pulled into a pricing war. And even then, there will be a lot of pressure from governments around the world in keeping the prices affordable in order to effectively vaccinate billions of people. And if another candidate is successful, it could be from a company with much bigger resources that has already publicly stated they will release it on a not-for-profit basis. Now, there are some other factors out there that have pushed the stock down after the company's initial news. One was a closer look at the company and its lack of success in bringing products to market. However, the big elephant in the room are the claims of pump and dump in regards to the company pushing out data, incomplete data at that, that would propel the stock price up right when pre-planned sales from insiders were going to occur. A week after I discussed this, particularly in regards to the eye-opening CFO trades that I made a special video on, CNBC started discussing the negative optics of this activity after days of cheerleading the company. My take is if the data the company presented is factual, there probably won't be any legal ramifications for the company, but it still can make someone start to question the integrity of the company's leaders. And you also have to wonder what the management team thinks about the company's future when there is so much selling going on. Common sense says if they feel they are on the verge of hitting the jackpot with a vaccine, wouldn't they expect a higher reward by selling later? It's not uncommon for selling to occur. It's just another thing to consider when they've sold 176 times more shares than they've bought over the past 12 months and 274 times more than the past 3 months when they know they're working on a vaccine and seeing its results. As with any company, you have to avoid getting pulled into the momentum and find as much information as you can and look at it objectively and then make the best assessment you can make. So where are we at today? I think Moderna is your typical high-risk, high-reward stock. The most recent news of having initiated the Phase 2 study and expanding a manufacturing agreement to enable production of a potential successful vaccine on a large scale have been good news for the company, which has helped the stock rebound some at the end of last week. Still, while concerns of the company's history and integrity on insider trading are out there, my biggest concerns are rooted in competition and potential government pressure on pricing. And I still am very aware that we are early on in the vaccine approval process. One slip up or setback could severely damage the company's bid for success. You also have to be comfortable knowing that there could be weeks or even months that go by without news, positive or negative, during these later phase studies while other candidates, some with much bigger names, try to play catch up and release data as they enter different phases of their own studies. Balancing everything out, while I still think Moderna is the current leader and can be successful, speaking for myself, I think the risks are too high to take a position at this time and at this price. With the potential constraints on pricing, the high failure rates of Phase 2 and 3 trials, and the consideration of how much the stock price has already valued a successful vaccine in it, this all leaves me feeling that taking a position in the company is extremely risky at this time. Okay, so there you have my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comments section. And to let me know if these types of videos are what you're interested in, please subscribe, hit the like button, and share with your friends. As always, I hope that we can all learn from each other on how to take little easy steps in making big improvements in our lives. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, have a great day.